you think she's happy?
Yeah, I do. I think there's been a lot of speculation online since. I think she's very tired. I think as is he. And what really struck me is just quite how little time that either of them have for themselves. But I suppose that is parenthood and the little space that she had for herself otherwise.
Firstly, it might be 2024, but there is a debate raging online, you may have missed, about whether women might be more fulfilled if they lived a life like the 1950s. Yeah. Tradwives are a huge phenomenon on social media, and none more than Hannah Neeleman, who is also known as Ballerina Farm. She boasts 9 million followers on Instagram. She is absolutely massive there, documenting her life on a Utah farm with no less than 8 children. The Times' Megan Agnew went to meet her, and the article that she wrote has sort of fanned the flames of this debate this week. Megan, hello, good evening.
Hi.
Okay, I wonder if you could maybe better than I did, just explain tradwife and what we mean by that term.
So, in the last couple of years or so, these women, these influencers online, have gained more and more followers. Now, they post publicly about having a domestic at-home lifestyle. So they cook everything from scratch. They look after their children, often very many, and often it is linked to Christianity. And they talk about the peace and the pleasure of reverting to sort of more traditional gender roles at home.
Right. Now, introduce us to Hannah Neeleman, who is perhaps the ultimate tradwife.
Yeah, so she has been called the queen of the tradwives, in fact. She's got 9 million Instagram followers and 8 children. And she doesn't actually associate herself with the term tradwife, though her husband is a little more okay with it and sort of shrugged and said, well, if we're trad dad and trad wife, then so be it. But she is really followed by a whole range of people, some of which can't stand her and really follow her to sort of itch this scratch of rage that they have. Other people think it looks gorgeous, which it does. She lives in the middle of Utah, like underneath these enormous mountains. It's truly, truly like awe-inspiring actually being there. And it just looks great on Instagram. And when you're sort of like scrolling on the tube and it's like city and hot and grim and you're coming back from your full day in your air-conned, hermetically sealed office, it's like this kind of like great release to look at. And then other people follow her because they want a lifestyle similar to that. So, I mean, she really stirs up a whole variation of opinions and feelings and deep rage as well in others.
All right. Okay. This is interesting. Yeah. So I'm just scrolling through, and it is actually quite addictive, isn't it? Whatever you think of the idea of being a tradwife and all of the kind of themes and issues that perhaps it throws up, it is undeniably very good Instagram content and clearly very successful Instagram content. Okay. Let's just deal with the elephant in the room. Is this a sort of anti-feminist movement, Megan? Is that part of this?
I think that it is capitalizing on what feminism has gained, which is this ability to choose. So they are saying we are choosing this lifestyle, and being able to choose in itself is a feminist act. Other people are saying that in choosing to do so and in doing so publicly, and by displaying it in a way that insinuates that this is the right way to do it, and if everyone did it this way, then everything would be perfect. That's where we're stuck on, basically. Right. So some people think this is a feminist act, other people think that we're regressing, as you said, back to the 1950s.
Right, that's so fascinating. Okay, so some people say that it's an act of feminism to choose the lifestyle that you want to choose, and that happens to be this one. Others say, I guess, in the promotion of it, you are, I suppose, you are pushing back against progress for females.
Yeah, and I mean, I think also this is in the US, so I'm in New York at the moment. and I flew to Utah there. And this is in the wider framework of the current cultural and political conversation in the US that's happening, where there's a huge emphasis, particularly by the Republicans at the moment, on American family values and what that means. And there's also, at the same time and alongside that, this curtailing of female reproductive freedoms. So the tradwives and Hannah Neeleman are also within that wider conversation. So the fear from a lot of sort of more liberal progressives here is that people, the tradwives will in some way underwrite the politicians who are saying that this is the proper way that families should be. Whether the tradwives mean to or not, and I don't think that a lot of it is as consciously political as that, but as lots of things in this country do, they get pulled into this wider political divisive debate.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. And do you know what, Megan, it's so fascinating, isn't it, when you sort of scratch beyond the surface of these things and you go, when we stress test the argument, is this just making cookies, or is it the promotion of an oppressive idea of what women should be that is actively being promoted by leading politicians in the country? That then becomes a very different kind of conversation, doesn't it?
And we've also been missold this quite a lot. Like as women, this way of life has been missold to us previously. Like, the perfect, harmonious, happy domestic life of, aren't you so lucky to be able to stay home with your children and look after the house? And the fact is that argument has been really weaponized and used manipulatively. So whether you are doing it by choice or not, and whether you have freedom in doing so or not, there's this deep fear from lots of women that, oh my God, it's happening again. It's happening again, just in different clothing, and that clothing is social media and Instagram. So that is why I think it sort of gets people quite deeply. And then the other side too, who choose to look after their children full time and are deeply rewarded by home life and cooking and providing, and their role is equally as important as their husbands, who might go out into the world and have more public power. They feel like, well, why shouldn't I be allowed to do this? And who are you to tell me otherwise? So those are the sort of two sides of the debate that I've certainly seen this week as well.
Yeah, that's very interesting, isn't it? What's Hannah's husband's role?
He is, they call one another co-CEOs. Hannah is the face of the brand, I would say, from looking at her Instagram and the Instagram page, the Ballerina Instagram page. And Daniel does have an Instagram page. It's called Hogfathering. And he...
Hogfathering? What does that mean?
I know, it kind of, yeah, I think it could have some euphemisms. He looks after the pigs. I think that's where it comes from. He has far fewer followers. He's got 500,000 followers or something. Mm. He is part of the brand, and together they are this sort of all-American, gorgeous, fertile couple. And they post about their life together. But when I was there, Hannah is definitely on the visuals. She understands how to do it, how to sell it. She leads on the social media. But Daniel is in charge of the farm, and he's in charge of, he wanted the big life out on the farm. And I think so did she after they'd met. But originally she wanted to be a ballerina and live in New York. She lived in the financial district, actually, and went to Juilliard. And that was sort of what she dreamt of. Daniel wanted this wild, brave lifestyle out in the American West, and to have a small farm. And the way that they make it work, the way that this farm is financially viable, is because of the Instagram page. In America, you could not have a small holding like that and survive unless you had other ways of making money, or unless you can crank your prices up because you're an online brand that people want to sort of invest in.
Right. Do you think she's happy?
Yeah, I do. I think there's been a lot of speculation online since. I think she's very tired. I think as is he. And what really struck me is just quite how little time that either of them have for themselves. But I suppose that is parenthood, and the little space that she had for herself otherwise. You know, I've interviewed, of course I've interviewed parents before, but I've never interviewed parents who I can't separate from their children in any way. So that was a bit of a struggle. There were lots of things that I wanted to ask her that I couldn't, because she was surrounded by her kids, and it felt quite inappropriate to ask her, like, you know, do you like these guys? Or why? Or like, do you use contraception? How do you family plan? You know, without insinuating that it was just difficult. It was really difficult to ask her those things. And the life is the farm, and the life is the children.
Did you get a sense of where the line is between her life and her brand?
The line is that she doesn't post about anything bad, which she says is her form of privacy. So that's a lot of the criticism that she gets from other mothers. You know, in the last 5 years, certainly we've become better at talking about the difficulties of parenthood, where people felt pressurized not to before. But Hannah and the Neelamans are sort of very much on the, like, everything looks, I mean, it's rustic and it's chaos, but it still looks gorgeous. And she doesn't really post about the bad things. So she'd call that her form of separation. The children aren't allowed phones or iPads, or they have a computer, but they're not really allowed to use it. But they are also these like enormous social media stars who are posted all over the internet. So it's a funny sort of contradiction. And I asked some of them, and some of them said that they did get a bit annoyed sometimes being on video all the time, but others sort of loved it. Daniel certainly, they said, you know, he loves, I said, do you get noticed when you're walking around? And they said yes. And Daniel loves wearing his cowboy hat, so he can sort of be seen. He'll wear his cowboy hat through the airport and through New York City. And so he's very noticeable. So I don't think that having a public life is something that they're pushing back against. It's literally how they're making money and what they've decided to pursue.
Okay, I'm just going through Instagram now, and I followed them, right? And once you sort of follow them, and once you kind of actually, if you just search Ballerina Farm on Instagram, and you flick through the suggested posts, there are a million like copycats, a million different accounts that are sort of doing a similar thing. Some of them actually are parodying them a little bit, but others I think are trying to genuinely kind of replicate what they have and sell it in the same kind of way. One of them is the food nanny. Is that another one? That's another one you come across, 400,000, and it's a similar thing. You're kind of like, you know, running a farm, meal prep and all that sort of stuff. And I suppose the kind of like the debate has raged, Megan, because there is a feeling that that what this family are doing and this trad wife phenomena is spreading. It is influencing people, that people are adopting this lifestyle, and whether or not that's kind of, you know, right or whatever. Is that real? I mean, are people actually really being influenced to live this life?
Well, before I wrote the story, I noticed that on my Instagram feed, I was being and I hadn't followed any of these tradwives. I was being served like suggested posts by young Catholic women who were talking about why it was important to dress modestly, and outfits to dress modestly for work, and why it was important to save yourself for marriage, and how to be pure and how to be good in the eyes of God. And I'm not a religious person and don't have any religious, I don't follow anyone that's openly and outwardly religious online, but I was being fed this sort of lifestyle content. So it is, young women are being put in this slipstream. And I'm not dressing modestly as a result, but there is some sort of maybe implicit, I don't know. Some people would say that it's important to hear that side of life, but I thought it was strange that was popping up on my Instagram feed. And I do know lots of mothers who do feel pressurized by seeing other women getting up at 5 a.m. so they can hand make muesli because their 2-year-old said that they wanted it the night before. That's not a realistic thing for most people, but it is realistic if you're making content about it and then making money from that content. So the content itself is not, it's not real.
Yeah. Okay. Really interesting. Megan, it's been a real pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Megan.